Welcome to the Rachel Varga podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Varga, double board certified aesthetic nurse specialist since 2011 with over 20,000 rejuvenation procedures performed. I'm an international clinical trainer for other physicians and nurses as well, celebrity skin expert, having been featured on some of the world's top proactive aging podcasts, and much, much more. Learn more at rachelvarga.ca and enjoy today's episode. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here today on the Rachel Varga podcast. Today, we're featuring Melanie Avalon. She is back. We are going to be talking all about biohacking for beauty, vibrancy, some of our biohacking pro tips as well. Because I'd like to say we're a little bit on like the intermediate advanced spectrum of biohacking. So we're going to be kind of like real, raw, unedited here. I would love for each and every one of you who's tuning in live here to drop us your biohacking questions in the comment section, and we will be featuring your questions live here on the recording on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe as well on the Rachel Varga YouTube channel, on the podcast, the Rachel Varga podcast, and also like and hit the bell so that you know when I go live next. Always hit those bell notifications, and that way it'll just take you right to the live feeds. You'll get easy updates and all of that. And also be sure to share this episode with a friend or family member that will also enjoy today's conversation. So Melanie Avalon has her own podcast as well. She actually has two podcasts. I'll tell you about those in a second. She's a SAG-AFTRA actress as well, and author of What, When, Wine, Lose Weight and Feel Great with Paleo-Style Meals, Intermittent Fasting, and Wine. She's also the host of the top iTunes podcast, the Melanie Avalon Biohacking podcast, and also in the show notes of this episode is the direct link to our conversation on the Melanie Avalon Biohacking podcast, where we get into the weeds on all things skin and aging well, beauty and vibrancy. We're also going to be sharing some great tidbits in today's interview as well. She also has the Intermittent Fasting podcast, and one of my good friends, Cynthia Thurlow, also a guru in the intermittent fasting space, is actually who introduced us a while ago. I got to have Cynthia actually back on the show as well. She is also, Melanie Avalon, who's joining us today, is also a New York Times best-selling co-host with Jen Stevens. She has appeared on numerous outlets, and Melanie is certified as a wine specialist by WSET. Her and I actually both share that in common, which is very cool, and is also a holistic nutritionist by the AFPA and is a member of Mensa International. Melanie is currently developing her first supplement line, Avalon X, and created the top iTunes app, Food Sense Guide, to help those with food sensitivities. She runs 3 rapidly growing Facebook groups with over 12,000 members, and we are going to be talking about Melanie's brand new supplement. We're also going to be giving some behind the scenes insight into the supplement industry that you need to know, because the whole reason you're tuning in here on the Rachel Varga podcast is to gain insight in all aspects of your life, body, mind, spirit, and energy, to help you be as vibrant and beautiful as possible, and also lots of tips for helping you kind of like become a smarter consumer and all of that fun stuff. Welcome, Melanie Avalon. It's a pleasure to have you back on the show. How are you today?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me back, Rachel. We are such kindred spirits. So this is really exciting. Me first on your show and then you on my show. And now that I'm back, I'm very happy. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming back. The first time we hung out, I think we were both, it was actually really, really adorable. We were both a little fangirly, if we can be totally honest with everybody, which I think is sweet. However, today's conversation, we've gotten to know each other quite a bit more over the last little while. So we're going to be getting a little bit more specific with some of the things that we lean into, especially when it comes to our biohacking pro tips. So my first question for you today, Melanie, is how has your sleep been lately, and how are you managing life at the moment?
Such a good question. Sleep is so foundational. People often ask me, what is the most important, diet, exercise, sleep. And it's not that like one is more important, because they're all very important, but sleep is just so important. And what's really interesting, I think when you and I first recorded last time, I had just received my Somavedic, which is in the back of your screen there. I don't think I'd set mine up yet. And what's really funny is you really inspired me. You're like, you got to start using this. And I did. And I saw such a difference on my Aura Ring scores since using it. I was sold. I actually bought a second one myself to put in my bedroom. It was that impressive. But that was a while ago. And for listeners, it's basically an EMF mitigation device. It helps with the EMF exposure in your environment. But as far since then and in general, my sleep is actually it's pretty good. I'm really, really religious almost about all of my sleep habits and my sleep hygiene, and I stick to all of it regardless of how crazy life is. And I think it really makes a difference. Actually, I've been thinking about this. So tonight we're doing a midnight release of my supplement, and I've been thinking, am I going to really like stay on and like be talking to the team and be watching the sales, or am I going to honor my sleep hygiene? And I think I'm going to text them and be like I'll be here, but tell me how sales went in the morning. Because I just think it's so important. But yeah, so my sleep it's been pretty good. Are you a night person or a morning person?
It's funny you ask this because, well, first of all, the Somavedic, let me just explain a little bit. I personally love kind of like woo esoteric technology. And I have interviewed the founder of Somavedic.
Oh, you have?
Jirash, and Jirash Kochar. You can check out the interview if you go to rachelvarga.ca/blog and you look up Somavedic, you'll be able to find our interview because I had him actually explain some of the technical aspects of it. And so I recommend you check that out. And if you want the Somavedic and lots of stuff we're going to talk about in today's show, you can go to my favorites page over at rachelvarga.ca. That's all going to be in the show notes below here. But the Somavedic is essentially a proprietary arrangement of semi-precious metals and stones. And I have a background in Gen Chem, Organic Chem, Biochem. I also have a pretty cool understanding of electromagnetics, having discovered that I am highly electromagnetically hypersensitive. So I will notice when things around me are a little bit off. So there's EMFs, there's Wi-Fi, but there's also geopathic stress. So where ley lines intersect, or if there's underground rivers or currents and things like that. So geopathic stress is something that's well known and well documented in the geological space. So it just helps to create a more coherent energy field, and it gives off a really cool light. Do you ever wonder though, Melanie, if all those people that are walking by your house at night, so we got our red light going, we're red light therapy nuts, we got our Somavedics going. Do you ever wonder about that? Like what your neighbors must think?
Yes. So because every single night, so right now I don't have the red light on because it makes a sound with the fan, but normally around this time and until evening, my room is just like red, like it's it's just pure red. And I do wonder. And then on the rare occasion I'm outside of my apartment and it's on, which is rare because it only stays on for 20 minutes. But when that does happen and I see my apartment from the outside at night, I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, it looks crazy. But
it's like Amsterdam in the neighborhood.
Yep. Red light district.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah. That's amazing that you interviewed the founder though. I did a blog post where I went through all the studies because they have literature on their website talking about the studies they've done. And I think only one of their studies is in a published journal, but it is. And then they do have other studies, and it's very impressive, like looking at the effects of the Somavedic on like cells in vitro, and then also in vivo experiments where people's heart rate variability and their sleep, and their like blood sedimentation. It's very impressive. So that's so cool that you interviewed him. I'm gonna have to like reach out to him.
Yeah, and when I got it, because I actually bought it myself, they didn't just send it to me. This was something I really just wanted to be very impartial about. I wanted to purchase it myself and do some testing. And I actually have a machine. It's called the BioWell. I had a biohacking birthday party recently with all my friends over at Upgrade Labs Victoria. So I'm super blessed to have an Upgrade Labs where I live. And I actually whipped out the BioWell and did a reading on one of my friends. And it's the first time I've seen anybody have like 100% joule output, because what it does is it measures the corona photona discharge off of your fingertips. We literally have little like lightning bolts coming off of each of our fingertips. And this is what I use to test the Somavedic. So I did a reading of everybody in my household because I'm kind of like in a family compound situation. So I was able to test a whole bunch of people before turning on the Somavedic and then afterwards. And I did actually notice that in the participants of my very small non-placebo study, not like a great study, but it's at least some type of data. Everyone had better joule output, which is really cool. And when we're talking about like sleep and HRV, heart rate variability, when we're talking about biohacking and sleep, this was the hardest thing for me to address. And I actually had like a record breaking HRV. What was that, yesterday? I felt like a freaking rock star when I worked out. It was amazing. Have you ever noticed when before you even check your metrics, you just feel like a freaking rock star, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's why.
I do. What I love, one of my favorite things is looking at the Aura score every morning and thinking like, what do I think it's going to say? And then seeing what it says. So yeah, actually the best sleep that I think I ever got on it was, was, I was doing bowel prep for a colonoscopy and endoscopy. And so I was completely fasted. I wasn't eating. And I was nervous because I had to wake up early. So I don't encourage this, but I took a Benadryl too. The next morning I woke up, it was like, you have had the best sleep ever. But the weird thing is I felt groggy and not so good. So I was like, I don't think it's worth it. But I thought that was interesting because normally I don't sleep well at all on an empty stomach. So it's pretty interesting finding there.
It's funny you mention empty stomach, and if I am kind of like a morning or evening person, sometimes, not sometimes, I have been known to take 1 to 2 hour baths in the evening. So we're talking like Epsom salt, baking soda. I got some amazing sage oil. If you guys want some local amazing white clary sage oil, hit me up, shoot me an email. I'll get you hooked up with that. And then I got my red light therapy going, and that's just my quiet time. That's part of my routine, right? In the morning, I'll take another bath. I don't have kids yet. I have this luxury right now. So those help with like my sleep and HRV variability and stuff like that. But like this morning, it's funny you mentioned it. I actually woke up at like 4:30 because I was hungry. And then I ended up working. I sent out a newsletter. So if you are subscribed to my newsletter, I actually sent out some really great sales that are happening. There were 3 sales. One of them is actually the Somavedic. The other one is the 8 Sleep. So I know that you've used biohacking mattress pads as well, but the 8 Sleep is like a temperature regulating one. So there's some sweet sales. Favorites page or check the email. And yeah, we're going to dive into biohacking pretty deep in this episode. So what's your experience with some of like the sleep optimizing stuff?
Yeah. So the thing that probably has one of the biggest effects is probably the thing I've been doing the longest, which is blue light blocking glasses. Just really taking charge of your light exposure. So those go on in the evening, and then there's no going back. And then on top of that, changing the lighting of my environment. So we already talked about using red light. So at night, I pretty much just light my apartment with red light. And then I have my whole routine. Because I'm a night person, so I tend to work late. But I have my whole routine of I do an infrared sauna session. That's probably I don't do a bath, but like my sauna session is like my long drawn out like rest and detox moment. And then I do my work up until I'm eating my dinner, and then and then I just read. I don't engage socially. Like I don't do social media or anything like that at night because I just find that that's way too stimulating. And then as far as actually sleeping, I use blackout curtains. I have a sleep mask that I adore. You mentioned sleep aid. I use Uller, but similar concept of the temperature regulation. That's just such a game changer for me. And then earplugs and all of that stuff. But really honoring my my sleep. And then I turning off the Wi-Fi and putting the phone on airplane mode. And like I said, I had the Somavedic. I have one in my bedroom now, but I do turn it off at night because it has because it glows. But yeah, I find as long as I stick to all my stuff, I'm good. Knock on wood.
We're doing a lot of some similar things here. We're gonna kind of like not one up each other, but be like, oh, you're doing this. Well, actually, I'm doing this as well. So another thing I'd like to add is air purification in the bedroom for better sleep. So I have the Hypo Air behind me right here. This is the Germ Defender. I actually sent out a newsletter with a sweet savings discount. Everything's on the favorites page at rachelvarga.ca. But the Hypo Air, I have that in my office here. I actually just unplugged it because I'm recording. Bedroom, bathroom, living space. And then I also have the taller Air Oasis. And then I'm lending the Boomerang out to my girlfriend because sometimes I'll chill out there in the evenings, but she's got mold in her house. So I gifted her that. Air purification is so key for sleeping. But the temperature regulation, I would agree with you. And a lot of listeners here are actually menopausal. So my hubby likes to sleep cold. I'll wake up freezing if if I have the same amount of blankets and things like him. So my side of the bed I put to quite a bit warmer in temperature than his. It's really nice being able to have that modulation with my partner so that I can sleep. But the air purifier is, I think, the one thing that I would add to what you're doing. And love that you're reading before bed. That's great. What are you reading right now?
I just want to comment on the air purifier. My obsession. Like if you can see, so I have, it's hard for me to point. I have 2 in this room. Well, 3, because there's one in the kitchen area. 2 in my bathroom, and then 1 in my bedroom. And I think you're supposed to have like 1 for the apartment. I'm like, no, I want like 7. But I had mold in at an apartment I lived in, and ever since then, I'm just so on top of it. I really recommend if people even slightly suspect that they might have water damage or mold to do testing. Because I had a leak in this apartment, and then we tested and there was mold, and I was like, no. So I made them remediate everything, and now it's gone. It can really be like a hidden kryptonite that most people don't even realize. So thank you for bringing up the air, because yes, like preach. Wait, what was the question you asked?
Yeah, just kind of like what else are you doing for sleep? But I think we kind of covered it, which is great. My
I
next
thought of one. I
Yeah,
turned
go for it.
the air conditioner down to
Mhm.
60 degrees actually.
Right.
I keep it cold though in general, so I keep it at 67 during the day. But there's a lot of studies on keeping the ambient air slightly chilly, and the actually the effects on like weight loss are pretty impressive, and metabolism. But yeah, I like cold. As you
Probably
can see, it's
because
winter right now, and I have this on.
yeah, but you're in California, right?
No, I'm in Atlanta right now,
Oh, you're
actually.
in okay, perfect.
Mhm.
So did you move?
Yeah, I've been here about 2 years this time around. I was there
Nice.
for about 10 years.
I was this close to leaving Canada about a month ago.
Oh, really? To go where? To where?
Somewhere else.
Sorry.
And I mean, this is a perfect segue. It's like, how are we managing life at the moment, right? How are you keeping your mind and your psyche strong during all this? Because you got 2 podcasts, you work with clients, all sorts of things. You just launched a product. How are you managing life at the moment and not succumbing to things like brain fog and adrenal fatigue?
Yeah, so this has been something I've been thinking about a lot recently. In particular because I had my grandmother passed away, and that was my first time having a life event where I was there. Because in the past, when there's been deaths or anything like that, I was in California, so I really just came back for the funeral for those, for things in the past. But this was the first time where it was like a major thing, and it it went over a few weeks because like she was declining, and then the actual funeral, and then with COVID and everything, it's been a little bit crazy. So it was a very long drawn out process. And I'm at a really good place about it. Like actually, like I had some beautiful moments. And I'm very much at peace, and it's been amazing seeing family.
What was
So,
her
but
name?
Peggy
What was her last name?
Watkins. And we had a beautiful moment actually where she was unresponsive and but she, like in the hospital, and I went over, like her eyes were closed, she hadn't been moving, and I went over and saw her for the first time, and I said, like, "Grandmother, it's Melanie," and she opened her eyes and turned and looked at me, and it was like, I'm never gonna forget that moment. It was incredible. I don't think I've ever felt so seen by another person in my entire life. So I will treasure that. And so I say all of this to say, dealing with life situations and things, I struggled a lot because I want to be there for other people. I was basically going over, every single day for like 10 days in a row. And I realized, I was talking to my therapist about this. It was so draining for me to know how to set boundaries for my own life, because I just wanted to help everybody. Um, but the thing that my therapist was saying, and it's something I want to work on. She was saying that, like, or her, and then actually another one of my friends, that, taking care of yourself is like, your self-care is so important, because that's really the only way that you can give the most of yourself to everybody else, is if you're taking care of yourself first, which sounds selfish, but that's the way you can ultimately give back to everybody. So that was really, really helpful. So what I've learned through all of this is all of the habits and routines and the things that I have in place in my life that support my energy and my physical nature and allow me to show up. Like, I have to honor them regardless of the situations, what's happening. Like, I have to take care of my, like, my body, mind, and soul first, so then I can ultimately help everybody else. So it's been a lot to grapple, and that might sound a little esoteric, but it's been very, very eye-opening for me personally.
This is a fairly enlightened esoteric community. I do not stray from the woo on the show. And I just want to thank you for sharing that experience. And what came up while you were sharing that was how important it is for us as women and men to honor our lineage and to honor our grandmothers. Some of those prayers that they said over us when we were little ones are still doing their thing to this day. And about, what was it, 2 3 weeks ago, my mother, when I got married, gave me a gift. And of course, I keep it in my little Tiffany's box here. And it's a locket that my grandfather gave my Nana. How sweet
love
is
it.
that?
That's amazing.
I know. I was I knew that it was going to come up. I was going to find it at just the right time, and it's inscribed "Love from Jack." So this is my most precious sacred possession ever. Like, over the Gibson Les Paul guitar, like this I will take with me to the grave, or pass it along. And it's just great having like our family supports and our communities, and being able to honor the lives of our grandmothers and those before us that kind of paved the way. What are some other things that you're doing to manage life at the moment, not get caught up in the collective, if you will, but to really keep your psyche strong and your energy, and any spiritual practices you're willing or comfortable sharing?
Yeah, so like I said, all of the sleep stuff that we said goes, and keeping my diet routine, and especially with like the holidays and people, there's a lot of tempting food, and a tendency to just kind of want to overindulge. But I'm really, really happy with the diet that I personally follow, and I feel like everybody has their own dietary choices that work for them. But continuing to eat the foods that nourish me, and also make me happy because they do, is so, so important for me. And then wait, I just had a thought that I lost. Well, as far as mindset, oh, that's it. I, I'm not subscribing, or I'm not necessarily saying everybody should do this, but I don't watch the news at all. Like, at
This
all.
is why we're friends.
Okay. The I kind of rely on my family and my friends who do watch the news. I figure if it's important enough, it will filter its way to me. Um, if it's important enough, I will learn about it. And then if it is something I need to like actually vet information, or go find more information about, I will. But I don't. There's nothing news related on any. Even like all my social feeds is basically my Facebook groups, which is a community of biohacking, health, mindset, awesome people. And then even with my Instagram, it's very similar. So that is so helpful for me. I understand that some people, love the news and love all of that, but I find that that's really helpful. And one of the most empowering quotes I think I ever heard was, "You don't have to have an opinion." And I just thought that was so freeing, because I think especially in today's culture, it's very polarizing and people feel like they have to have an opinion about everything. But it's okay if you actually don't have an opinion. Like, that's okay. You don't have to engage in anything that you don't want to engage in. So I'm all about that, but then I'm also all about just really being open to everybody's perspectives. As far as the mindset stuff goes, gratitude is just my most favorite thing ever. So beginning and ending my day with my gratitude list, I just think is so, so important. And really I just try to engage content wise with uplifting, helpful things. I love seeking knowledge. So most of the stuff I'm reading is nonfiction, but it's always seeking things that will, better enhance my life, and so I can learn and share it with my audience. But that's some of the stuff.
Thank you for being transparent with that. Actually, really good timing. You're talking about indulgence, because when we talk about some of our top biohacks and things like that, which we'll get into a sec here, you did a recent test and looked at how your body dealt with carbs. So we'll talk about that in a moment, because I actually wouldn't mind doing that test kit as well. And I'll share what my experience will be with that if I do it, of course. But I'm all about moderation. I personally don't follow a strict diet. Now, that being said, I love the Viome test kit to help me figure out what foods are like my superfoods and my avoid foods. They're having some sweet sales right now too, actually. And so I do follow those, but sometimes, maybe I'll have an alcoholic beverage, even though I know it's going to crush my HRV and my sleep quality sometimes. Not all alcohol will do that, like dry farm wines, for example. I know you're a huge fan of. That's definitely a cleaner type of wine. But having the flexibility and the grace to sometimes have like this little bit of something that is going to give us joy, go for it. Just don't, eat the whole freaking pint of ice cream or the whole chocolate bar or 2 chocolate bars or 3 chocolate bars. We all have those weak moments. I mean, let's just not pretend that we don't. But I love what you said also about not watching the news. I do not watch the news, no mainstream news. And it's really interesting if you are a person that doesn't and you interact with people that do, it's like there's like spell or hypnosis that's occurring within North American societies. And I've been hearing more and more psychologists and experts of psychological manipulation. This is a very deep, dark subject, but it is something that's happening. And I have spoken about this before. I really encourage everybody to focus on things that are of love, beauty, high vibration, peace, grace. It's not about sticking your head in the sand, because there are some things that are happening that aren't very great. Like where I live, there's terrible flooding. Basically, from Vancouver onwards is cut off from the rest of Canada. We've had huge floods wipe out our major highways. So people are starting to freak out about shortages. Like everyone was going to the gas stations yesterday to fill up. They were honking at each other. They were kicking each other's cars. So this is how the stuff plays out through this manipulation through the news, which I'm really proud of you for saying that. Thank you for doing so. It creates this element of fear. It's like, oh, there's something else we have to be reactionary about and prepare for. Like, yeah, by all means, be prepared. I got a generator, I got extra fuel, I got extra food and water. That's really important. And people literally are being evacuated a couple cities over from me because we have farmlands underwater. We've had thousands of livestock killed. Like, calamities do happen, but it's how you choose to navigate those calamities and stay positive. How do you think you would do if you were faced with like a huge crisis of, say, you're told to evacuate in 5 minutes? What would you take? What biohacking? There we go. What biohacking items would you take if you had 5 minutes to pack?
Well, first of all, I wanted to comment. I'm so sorry that you're going through that. That's very intense. I hope it resolves. Was that the reason you were thinking of moving because of all of that going on?
Well, living on an island, I live on an island. So if in an emergency situation, usually living on an island isn't a good idea.
Hmm.
And I've known that for quite a while. But there's lots of other reasons. In my opinion, Canada isn't really what it used to be. My grandfather actually fought for freedom in our country, and I would beg to question if he would be satisfied with what he saw some of his friends give their lives for, if he would be happy with the state of the world where I am. There's a lot happening. I actually did a really encouraging episode right before this, actually talking about crypto and how a lot of us are just creating new systems. So I would like to think that I like looking at new systems, but also understanding that some things around us are just going to crumble, and you can't create change without deaths of something. So do you have anything to add to that?
Um, a lot of things. Well, speaking to what you were saying about the role of fear and all of that in our current state, I feel so strongly about this. I'm really, really intrigued by the state of fear that's created right now with everybody, kind of like what you were talking about with like psychological manipulation and stuff like that. But I think the thing that has been honestly one of the most freeing things for me personally, and I wish everybody could feel this. It's that because people are getting so offended about everything all the time now. Um, and the biggest epiphany I had was that, I don't think our feelings and our reactions are other people's responsibilities. So if I'm perceiving that I'm offended by something, um, it's not the other person's problem. It's not their fault. It's not the, it's all my reaction. And I find that really enlightening because if I ever feel offended about something, I can it's like a little flashlight going on. It's like, oh, there's something here that I'm scared about. Like it comes back to the fear. Like there's something I'm insecure about. There's something I'm fearful about. Like they're touching something in me that I clearly am fearful, I think, of, or ego, or it's my ego. And I think that has been probably the most enlightening thing, like epiphany wise, that I've had in 2021. Um, it really, really helps whenever I have that reaction, because I just think it's the complete opposite of what a lot of society is doing right now. You just have to like walk around on tiptoes and get worried about all of that. So yeah, but I could not agree more about what you said about, sometimes for there to be substantial change, sometimes, yeah, things have to go down first. So we'll see. I'm very hopeful though. I don't know. I am very hopeful about. I love our world despite everything that's happening, and I'm really excited for the future. And I'm so empowered by seeing people find change in their own lives, and so I'm hopeful despite everything that's happening.
I love this conversation. And even from when we last met, I see a big shift in you.
Oh,
Mhm.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
In the way
That's
that you're speaking and your outlook. And it's really beautiful what I'm seeing. And I'm really enjoying this conversation. And we've actually just had some feedback from the audience. Matthew says, Thank you for all that you do, Rachel. Have a wonderful day. You and Gabe, that's my hubby. Matthew follows my hubby's YouTube channel as well. Gabriel Varga YouTube. He's a 6-time pro world champion kickboxer. For all you gents out there that are tuning in, hit up my hubby's YouTube for some workout tips. Matthew says, you and Gabe are two of the nicest and kind people on the planet. You're 100% right. What you're doing is something positive. There are others creating new systems of control that are dangerous. Yes, it's important to have wise discernment right now. And I know this isn't like a religious thing, Matt says, or anything, but do you know in the Bible, the most written phrase is do not be afraid. Fear will take everything from you. Thank you, Matthew. I'm going to give y'all a little behind the scenes. I have a 1970s version of the Guiding Light Bible. This is like a white leather. It has gold on the pages. It's literally, it's the New King James Version. So what's really interesting when I read this, the translation of it actually, in my opinion, has more power to it than, say, the New International Version. And but Christianity, Christ consciousness, that's just my lineage. There's many different types of beautiful lineages out there. You really just have to do with what's in resonance with you and your lineage. We were talking about grandmothers earlier, and all of that. And some things are just offensive, though. He says, you know what, Melanie, what you said about people getting too offended, they're over everything. I actually post this on one of my social medias a little while ago. I think it's like a Brad Pitt meme. Let me bring it up because you're so right about this. People are just getting way too offended these days, aren't they?
Well, I've thought about it because thank you so much, Matthew, for the feedback. Because the thing that he said at the end about some things are just offensive, like, because I have this approach now, and I've thought about that very question, like, okay, can I think of something that is legitimately offensive? And what it comes down to is, I think a reframe of it is if somebody does something that, anybody quote would say is offensive, um, it's more about understanding that, I think it's still like your reaction is still like your offended reaction, I still think is us, because I could observe, like somebody could say something legitimately quote offensive to me, and I could acknowledge, wow, what they said, society would say is offensive, and what they said is it's not my frequency. I don't agree with it. But that reaction of like they have done something to me, or I need to like fight back or defend myself or get angry or attack. I think that's the offended reaction I'm speaking to. And I don't know if you ever have to have that reaction. Well, I mean, all reactions are okay, but that's what I like really look at. And I'm like meandering all over the place, but I just say it because I have thought exactly about what Matthew says. Like, is there something that's the exception? But I don't know. It's a really fun thing to ponder, and it's a really fun thing to start noticing in yourself, and then think, why am I thinking that? Like, what does this say? So
You, my friend, are starting to unpack the little tidbits of insight into shadow work. And Carl Jung is one of the most well-known psychotherapists who actually does a lot of work on shadow work. There's a great book. I recommend everybody tuning in here to pick up a copy. It's called Owning Your Own Shadow. And it'll just give you some more insights into understanding you and your psyche, your thought process, and all that. But when it comes to telling a joke, check this out. This is a meme that I posted on my social a long time ago. It's called a joke. We used to tell them before people became offended by everything. How much do you resonate with this?
I love that. Yep. It's so true. That's amazing.
We're like coddled weaklings now,
I
honestly.
know.
And I feel like those of us who are biohackers, we are going to be the most beautiful. We're going to be the most radiant, the most resilient. We're kind of the ones that, in my opinion, are going to be holding it down for the rest. What do you think about that? Has that ever crossed your mind?
I have thought about it a lot. Because I don't want to get too political about anything, but especially now with our current culture, and like, I think this is the first time that health choices have become the forefront issue right now. And it's ironic because we've, the common, if you can say, quote, causes of death for such a long time, have been, um, you know, chronic disease and degenerative disease rather than acute infections or illness. And I think the biohacking community has historically, we've been so steeped in agency in our own health, and being very much aware of the state of our bodies and our health. And I think now it's all really coming to the forefront. But I think if you've been in a sphere like the biohacking sphere where you have been honoring your health, um, it it allows you to make the best decision for yourself. I think right now, like, it's like because I think a lot of people until our current situation right now hadn't thought much about like health because it wasn't like in our face. So I think there's some peace in having been thinking about health for so long. And then as far as just like resiliency and showing up, yes, like the stuff I do is so that with like biohacking, so physical health, but also mental health, it's so that I can really live my life to the best of my abilities and capabilities. So when things get really intense in our world, it's like we've been doing the things that keep us going. And yeah, I think it's a really nice foundation to have, for sure.
This is such a beautiful conversation. I do want to be respectful of your time. Do you have a hard stop?
No, I'm good.
Fabulous, because I'd love to keep going if you're down, because
Mhm.
I think that listeners, all of you tuning in here on the show, I'm all about just sharing encouragement right now. And I'm sure there's going to be some nuggets of insight that many will glean from this conversation. So thank you for your willingness to be transparent, because we learn from one another. There are some things that have come up in my life in working with my psychological awareness and my psyche and stuff like that. And we have to pay attention to those aspects of our lives. You mentioned therapy. Yes, I work with a psychotherapist probably once a month as well. There's no shame in that. But when it comes to people asking us questions, and this can really relate to anything. If there's something you don't want to answer, don't answer it. You don't owe anybody an explanation for nearly anything. And sometimes I'm asked about certain things. And honestly, there's more important things in the world to talk about than one thing. I mean, if you look at history, there's always been many things happening in the world. It's not like one thing is more important than other things. It's all about a balance with what we choose to put our attention on. But if you don't want to answer a question, simply don't answer it. And getting offended and triggered, it's actually really cool, deep psychological work. I mean, if you're willing to do the work, to do the shadow work, to learn what's triggering you when you are having conversations with people and you might not agree with something. That's okay. Some of the best innovations come from people having constructive conversations and disagreeing. But what we're seeing now is those conversations, unfortunately, aren't happening, which is leading to some detrimental outcomes of certain things. Like you mentioned, chronic disease and inflammation and toxicity and poor diet and exercise being put on the wayside, and this like golden pillar kind of thing as an option. So doing the shadow work is really, really, really beautiful. And I'm so grateful for you being forthcoming about how you're
No,
navigating.
no, thank you. It sounds like we're very much on similar pages. So this is wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I feel like I'm interviewing Melanie Avalon 2.0 here. This
Oh.
is awesome.
This is wonderful.
All right. So let's get, the reason we met 45 minutes into the interview. Biohacking pro tips. Okay, let's go 3D for a second. We kind of went a little bit more psychological, mental. I'm sure there's some encouraging tidbits there. But here we go. This is also along the lines of, do we need to explain ourselves to people? What is it like being a biohacker? Do some of your friends and family think what we do, and maybe what you do as well, is a little over the top? Let's just be real. What is it really like to be like a pro biohacker these days?
It's funny because I've been doing all of these things for so long that they just seem second nature to me. Like envisioning myself not doing the things I do is like very strange to me. Like I can't see myself like not wearing my blue light blocking glasses, not doing my sauna, not doing my cold exposure. Like it's all just such a part. It just enhances my life so much that it's weird to think there was a time I wasn't doing all of that. Um, but as far as like people thinking you're over the top, um, yeah, people do. I mean, the nice thing is within the social media world, it kind of like is like attracts like. So the community that I am involved in social media is pretty much on board. It's more like in the real life world that people sometimes think things are a little bit crazy. My family, though, has been I've been like this for a while that they're pretty used to it. It's more what happens all the time is I'll be talking to random people at the grocery store or just in my daily life. And normally, because what I'm doing with my shows and similar like with you is just learning information and like finding things that work for me and then sharing them with others. Not saying everybody has to do everything I do, but everything that works for me, I want to share it with the world. So because it might help somebody else. So normally the conversations that I end up having with, random strangers is something comes up that I'm like, oh, I know something that might help you. Again, not me trying to like change them, but just me being like, this has really helped. And then normally it's something very granular and specific in the biohacking world. And that normally leads to like them figuring out all the other crazy things I do. But yeah, I don't have any insecurities around it if that's part of the question. Like I love it. And people think it's weird, then oh well. So yeah, I love it.
I think I'll be pretty honest here. I think my husband thinks I'm a little over the top sometimes. It's like, you ever
Yeah.
wonder if all this biohacking stuff just isn't good for you? I'm like, well, actually, I know it is because I track it with both my 8 sleep mattress cover and my Aura ring. So I'm looking at Matrix and I love seeing that heart rate variability just have jumped way up. I think I was sitting at about 38 milliseconds about a year and a half ago, and now I'm at about 130 something.
Oh wow.
So that is a massive jump. And the way that I overcame that was through sleep optimization. So yeah, blackout blinds, earplugs, air purifier, you name it. My poor hubby, he's just along for the ride. But as an athlete, he ends up benefiting from what I learned here on the show, interviewing one another, that it actually can have a positive impact in his work and reducing inflammation and avoiding like toxic seed oils. We go to the grocery store and I'm like checking all the oils. He's like, but I really like this mayonnaise. Having the one thing isn't going to kill me. I'm like, oh, it's a cumulative effect. Like, I do have a question for you because I
Hmm.
find this come up in myself. So we're like in the online space, and then you mentioned how, in the real world, talking with like our friends and family. It's funny how you said that. But when people ask you, what do you do? How do you answer?
Yeah.
How do you answer that?
I usually say I'm a podcast author, actor who does lots of stuff. I kind of just like put all of these different things together. And it's kind of funny. I recently was on Entrepreneur for their podcast and I was like talking to my mom. I was like, but I don't think I'm an entrepreneur. And she was like, Melanie, you're like definition entrepreneur. But yeah, I normally just tell people that I normally say podcaster, author, actor. I don't normally say biohacker because people don't really like they wouldn't know what that is. But if we go further, I do bring it up. Can I comment on one thing you said that that was really resonated with me? Um, when your husband said like, how do you know all of this stuff is good for you or not? Um, I think I will say that I think one of the most important things for me and for a lot of people in the biohacking sphere to understand is the mindset approaching the biohacking. I think is so key because for the longest time I was turning to biohacking to try to save myself from health conditions. And it got to this point where like I was neurotic about it and I felt like I had to be doing all of these hacks and like if I wasn't then I was failing. And in a way, it became almost stressful because I was like, oh, I have to be doing everything and all the things. So now I've had a complete 180 where I don't have to do any biohacking if I don't want. So I'm just doing it to enhance my life. And I don't want it to become like an added stress. That said, with that approach, I still do all the things because they genuinely are what make me feel amazing and alive. But I think a lot of my audience will be like, I'm so stressed. Like there's so many things. How do I know what to do? And I want to encourage people, like, it's okay. Like try things out, do them if they work, don't do them if they don't. If you don't do it every day, that's okay too. Like just do what resonates. So I just wanted to comment on that.
That's awesome. And also to do it in a sustainable way. I was having this
Mm.
conversation in one of my masterminds. So a mastermind is like a group of men, women. It's usually like in a niche market and topic. And we share all these really cool insights and stuff like that. And a lot of this stuff has been coming up. A lot of us it's kind of like quote unquote resetting the way that we work, right? So I'm a double board certified aesthetic nurse specialist. I have my nursing degree and then I have my board certification in plastic surgical nursing and all that cool stuff. But if someone were to ask me, Rachel, what do you do? I wouldn't say a nurse. I don't even know how to answer that. So that's kind of something that I'm working through too. Cause it's like, I'm not just a podcaster, right? I don't just do skin consults. I don't just sell skincare. I don't just do skin camps. It's like, I think a lot of people tuning in are probably having this kind of like reset moment because our whole lives have changed tremendously over the last 2 years. 2 weeks turned to 2 years awful quick, but that's a whole other topic. But I think a lot of people tuning in have switched up the way that they work, and they might be having this kind of moment where it's like, what do we call ourselves now?
Or the other word would be influencer, but I feel like that has like a negative connotation to it. But in a way that if it didn't have the negative connotation, I might use that word because everything that I'm doing is like influencing other people. But yeah, no, it's such a good question. I don't know. That's why I throw in a lot of adjectives in
Wow,
there. Or nouns.
I think
They're
it's
nouns.
great. Isn't it interesting the different connotations we have over the word like nurse, the word influencer, the
Hmm.
word biohacker? So just some food for thought here. Why don't we jump into talking about free biohacking tips? Let's talk about some free stuff because I feel like this conversation I've had with my hubby is like people can spend a small fortune buying all these biohacking test kits and devices, which, yes, they do serve a purpose. Same with skincare and rejuvenation. But I always encourage to do it in a sustainable way. And in the mastermind I'm a part of, we're talking about sales, right? And for me, if I get the sense that maybe someone can't really afford something like a whole skin kit with like basic skincare, dermal rolling, advanced peptide serum, supplement, I use in the DF mobile. If it's not quite in their budget, okay, let me help plan it out for you that it'll be in a sustainable way. But other people, they don't sell their services or offer that way. It's like they don't even care about that stuff. But I like my clients to keep coming back and know that they could trust us. So it's kind of different than just like the influencer of like posting stuff on Instagram. It's like, no, we want to create community and interact with those who are hanging out and learning together. But what are some of your kind of like free favorite biohacking tips? And I also want to know, because I see on your social media that you're a bit of an indoor gardener, and how is that going for you?
Yeah, so great questions. So there's definitely free because there's a lot of like you said, biohacking things, potentially expensive biohacking things, but there are things you can do that don't cost anything, obviously. So something that I do every single day that is expensive in biohacking, but that's cryotherapy. Um, Going into a freezing chamber, like negative 300 degrees for 3 minutes. But the free version of that is, waking up with a cold shower or during the winter, going outside and getting your cold exposure. So I think cold exposure is a great one that's free. Um, a lot of, so I have like devices that are help with instigate the parasympathetic state. So I have like an Apollo Neuro and I have a Zen by Nirvana the free version of that might be like tapping, for example, or different massage. I guess you'd have to pay for that, but somebody else can give you a massage, your significant other. So exercise is free. Obviously, exercise, diet, and sleep, not necessarily biohacking, but doing them in a way that really supports your health. That's all free, and your mindset is free, like your your perspective of the world. Um, but as far as the gardening situation, yeah, I have some air garden units to grow plants hydroponically indoors, and it is I can't even express the effect it has had on me. Like having these plants inside makes me so happy. And I did not anticipate that it would have that effect. I just thought it would be cool to grow like cucumbers, but I have a unit that grows cucumbers and they're growing up my windows, and I have herbs, and it just having that life on the inside inside of my apartment has just been really, really amazing. And I don't think I ever really thought about, I did a little bit, but I didn't hardcore ponder the sentience of plants. But now that they're actually growing here and I'm taking care of them, I'm like, oh, these things are alive. Like, so that's been really amazing. I really encourage people. Again, I'm using the air garden units, but it's not expensive to, just grow. Well, there you could get the units, or just, taking up growing on your own in your own capacity. I think it's a really amazing thing to have indoors or
Love
outdoors.
it. Love it. Well, we're talking about like gardening and stuff like that. My husband and I have recently gotten into mushroom foraging. So we have like winter chanterelles where I live here on the West Coast. We also have a certain type of reishi mushroom that grows. So we're kind of like right at the end of harvest season. So it's been really fun. And we're getting cold exposure at the same time because it is like cold. It's like 4 degrees, which is, I don't know, like 60 something degrees Fahrenheit. So we are doing a lot of that. My sister is actually an organic farmer, so we're going to be buddying up to make some essential oil, some bath and beauty products. So stay tuned for that. We're going to talk about your product coming up and what it was like to formulate in one of the next questions here. But there's 3 free biohacking things that I also love to do as well. Cold plunge. I used to do that a lot more, to be honest, after 2 car accidents for pain regulation, nervous system reset. It's a really good skill to develop how you handle extreme cold exposure, because I have developed certain breathing techniques from that. And I was doing some kickboxing the other day with my hubby, and I did a spinning back fist on one of his, it's like this metal bar with like a little like teardrop ball at the top of it. And I smoked the metal, and I actually thought I might have broken my wrist. So while I was assessing the situation, I actually, instead of like freaking out and swearing, I actually went into my cold plunge breath. It was really interesting. So I think that to deal with stress and all of that, getting regular cold exposure when you feel like your body needs it is a really good coping mechanism, so that when you do experience something that traditionally your body would freak out with, you would actually end up managing it better and can regulate your nervous system in literally seconds. So cold therapy has many benefits. Sunlight in the morning and sunset. In the morning, I like to get sunshine in my eyes while I'm taking my bath, while I'm putting on my skincare and my makeup, doing my hair, stuff like that. Helps with circadian rhythm to then help you sleep better that night. And Epsom salt soaks with baking soda, and also some of my pineapple body oil that you can get on the store at rachelvarga.ca. And kind of like an extra would be avoiding. So this isn't like a biohack, but it's just stuff to avoid. I don't eat any commercial meat, food, and alcohol, or like processed foods, stuff like that. So let me know if you have any comments to add on that.
Yeah. So my new obsession is mushrooms. It's so crazy that you say that. I've become obsessed. I just realized how, I knew that they taste amazing and I really resonate with the umami taste, being like a protein lover, but I did like all the different varieties. Like I've been like researching and like, I want to try all of them. So that's really exciting to hear that you are foraging them. That's amazing. Um, and I wanted to say I had Wim Hof on the show and he said the same thing about like, cause he came to his breathing method because of the cold. Like he would do the cold and he realized it would make him breathe a certain way. So it's interesting to hear that you had that same, experience. Yeah, Wim Hof breathing would be another thing that would be free for people, and any sort of breathing exercises. So yeah, so many resources for people.
I feel like people psych themselves out before doing the cold therapy. One of my friends, Dr. Tabitha Barber, she's known as the functional gynecologist, great podcast, collaborated a couple times. But she did a little story of her getting in a cold bath, and there's JJ Virgin like helping her in to make sure she gets to her jaw, put her arms in, and she just like freaks out. She's like, ah! And I feel like if you have the mindset of, I'm just going to get in this container full of cold water and I'm going to be calm. And when you actually tell yourself ahead of time to do it, it's interesting how it can actually really impact you. Talking about mushrooms, you got to interview these guys. So this is Malama mushrooms from Hawaii. We've interviewed the founder of this on the Beauty and the Biohacker podcast. I'm obsessed with chaga mushroom in my coffee. There's so many different benefits to mushrooms and all of that. So yeah, definitely. There is a promo code to get the Malama mushrooms on the beautyandthebiohacker.com/blog site. And favorites, you'll find that there. How do you take mushrooms? Are you taking them in like powders? Or are you eating them?
Eating them. Yeah, I try to, I mean, it's like I said, we'll probably talk about my supplement, but as far as like this, when it comes to supplements, and I really try to err as much as possible on the side of more real foods, just because I personally hit a lot of supplement overwhelm, I think. So if it's something, and I think like supplements are great, and especially like I know people do take mushroom supplements and things like that. But if it is something where I can like just eat it in a food, I'll probably do that. And I've been like just loving the taste that the different mushrooms add to my food. I want to like find a place like a farmer's market or something and find like all the varieties, because who knew they're amazing. So yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm going to start to do some tinctures as well because there's like a dual process to extract the polysaccharides and the terpenes from mushroom using a water extraction process and alcohol extraction process. So because of my background in biochem, I'm going to buy myself a distiller and I'm just going to do it. It's going to be awesome. So I'll forge some stuff and then I'll send you some. Why don't we talk about your supplement? So what is serapeptase and why are you developing it as your first supplement?
Yes. So serapeptase, it's a supplement I've been taking for years, although I'm no longer taking the ones I was taking, which I can talk about. But it's an enzyme created by the Japanese silkworm originally. Now it's grown in a lab. So, like, our version is vegan, but it's proteolytic, meaning it breaks down proteins. So you take it in the fasted state, it goes into your bloodstream, and then it breaks down problematic protein buildups. So a lot of autoimmune conditions, for example, is your body reacting to proteins. A lot of allergies is your body reacting to protein buildups. Scar tissue, fibroids, all of this is proteins that need to be broken down essentially. And so that's what serapeptase does. It has a huge anti-inflammatory potential. There's actually a lot of studies on it, rivaling NSAIDs for the pain relief, but without any of the side effects of NSAIDs. It enhances wound healing. It works selectively to help damaged tissue while not affecting healthy tissue. Like, doesn't break down healthy tissue or anything like that. There's been studies on it, how it can reduce cholesterol. It even can break down amyloid plaque. For me, the benefits the most are the brain fog. It just clears my mind. It gets rid of my seasonal allergies. It's a really like healing compound, and it's something I've been taking for years. And the reason I wanted to make my own was we on the intermittent fasting podcast, when my co-host and I, Jen, first met, she's not a big supplement person at all. Like, she does not really take supplements. When we started our podcast, there was one supplement she was taking, and it was serapeptase. Like, nobody's heard of serapeptase. And I was like, I take that. So we sort of started, like, we would always talk about it and how we loved it. And my listeners just became like, they started taking it, and it's become this whole thing. And people would ask for my recommended brand. And finally I was like, I should just make my own brand. Especially because of its proteolytic nature, it actually easily breaks down. It doesn't usually survive the stomach. So it needs to be enteric coated to be absorbed in the small intestine. So a lot of the brands on the market have enteric coatings, and they don't disclose what's in the enteric coatings. So I started diving deep and realizing that all the brands I could find, they had fillers like palmitates or stearates, which might have an issue. They had, or they would say they had no additives, but they would have this enteric coating, and you just don't even know it's more like, what is that? So I was like, I just got to make my own. And I've been wanting to do it anyways, but I didn't want to. I mean, was it you and I talking before about like all the things we want to do and having to know like where to put your energy. So I didn't want to personally like take it all on myself, but a existing supplement company reached out to me actually because they wanted to partner for like affiliate stuff or have me like promote their brand. But then I connected with one of the co-founders so well, and he was so excited by my serapeptase idea. So we decided to co-develop it together. And I've learned so much about the supplement industry, and I've been so intense. Like, I feel really bad. I've been so intense because he kept approaching me with, because we didn't know if we could make it without any fillers. And so he kept approaching me with options that he thought were going to be good. And I'd be like, no, we can't do that. Like, he'd be like, can we have, like, he found this like rice enteric coating capsule. And I was like, we can't do rice because it might cross react with gluten. And he was like, what about this acacia capsule? And I'm like, nope, low FODMAP people can't do acacia. Like, it was so intense. So we finally got a formulation that I'm just thrilled with. It has a tiny bit of a lubricant, which is MCT, which a lot of people actually take that as a beneficial supplement. So I feel really good about that. And then the enteric coating is made of hypermellose and cellulose, which is very, very benign. So I'm so excited, and I've been taking it now, and it does. One of the common complaints of serapeptase is that it upsets your stomach. This like does not. I've seen amazing effects on my own inflammation levels. It's just really exciting. It's in a glass bottle. I can show you. It's like right here. So I don't know if it'll show up because it's so bright. Yeah, I can't. There we go.
What's really cute is actually right before we started recording, I told you that I was in an elevator today dropping off. It was a detox kit. It's this Clear and Renew kit. Lots of people are wanting to detox right now. It's for a fellow nurse friend of mine and some other things and some supplements. And on the floor in the elevator was this beautiful little flower blossom. And it's your branding colors, and it's just like the flower that's on your bottle. So that was a really cute little synchronicity.
It's so interesting.
A ton of those.
No, it's really interesting. It's so funny because like the design on the bottle it's like a nebulous color thing that I'm so happy with how it turned out. But it's interesting to hear what people see in it, because like I didn't perceive it as a flower, but it's interesting to hear that it's a flower to you. Somebody else said they thought it looked like a kiss. Like, it's so funny that it's kind of, wait, I'm having an epiphany. It's like when they do like the stereotype of being at the therapist and they show you blobs and like what do you see? Like, what do you see?
The blot stuff.
It's like, because you see what you want to see. Like, I mean, you see like what's in your that was a Sixth Sense line, but you you see, what's in your psyche. So yeah, but it's really exciting because we're launching, and what time is it? And now like almost less than 5 hours. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to get my hands on a bottle of that once it's live. And when this goes on the podcast, I'll be sure to include a link so that everybody can check it out and see if it's going to be right for them as well. And I know that you learned a lot about the white label industry during your process of formulating. And it's really important that ourselves as entrepreneurs and quote unquote influencers, we do not take your trust and support lightly. And both Melanie and I, we really cherish our communities and our clients and those who are just kind of taking this wild ride with us. And I know for me, I always try and look at the beauty and the radiance around me to keep myself positive, my body, mind, spirit, energy nice and strong. What would you say are some of your closing thoughts for staying, detox? Obviously, taking your supplement to help with a breakdown of different protein accumulation. I think that's brilliant. But what are you focusing on these days that's beautiful and is giving you just like a little bit of like a happiness hit?
Yeah. So, a really quick comment about what you just said. Um, I do think that is so important. Like the trust of like my audience, your audience, everybody listening. Like I would not, because I get so many brands approach me. I mean, daily brands come to me wanting to work with me, and I mean, 90% of the time, I'm like, no. Like it has to be exactly like up to my standards, and I would never betray that to my audience. And yeah, I just thought that was really important to touch on. But yeah, as far as, I mean, there's so many things, but I think one thing, when we were talking about this before the show, one thing I've become a little bit obsessed with recently, and this is not like the big takeaway that everybody needs to do, but it's just what's on my mind right now, and it's flowers. I recently ish had an episode with Katie Hess, who wrote a book called Flower Revolution. And she has a flower essence company, but her book is all about the science of flowers. And I mean, going back to like that plant sentient stuff, it's really, really fascinating. And ever since, like before this, I always thought flowers were just about like the colors, but now I'm like, oh, there's like an energy potential here that's happening. And so I've started using her flower essences, and they have been, I mean, just game changers. And then when I get flowers, you can actually see flowers, because you mentioned your birthday. I guess we have similar birthday. Is your birthday in November?
I'm a Virgo to the T.
When
So
is
that's September.
I know nothing about the horoscopes. Okay, September. I just know mine. Okay, mine was in November, so sort of recently.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
We're 25 again, right? Wink, wink.
I know, I know. So you can see the flowers in the back. And in the past I would have been like, oh, just they're pretty, but now I realize, oh, it's like there's a reason that we give flowers to people when, to celebrate, or when they're going through a hard time. Like there's actually like an energy potential thing that's happening there. A very scientific thing. So yeah, it's kind of granular and specific, but that's something fun that has been bringing beauty to my life.
Oh, I love that. It's been amazing talking with you today. I would love an intro to the speaker you had talking about that, because I know that there are some electrodes that you can actually put on plants, and then in the mitochondria, there's the electron transport chain and all of this. So that's where protons and electrons are being exchanged, and that's how we can actually measure the potential in the cell. And I have a feeling that that's actually what these little like probes are detecting. And you put these little probes on a plant, and then it makes a sound depending on what the frequency is. So I need to get my hands on one of those. So when I do my off-grid days, I get to like be tested all the plants and see what they sound like. And it'll be super duper nerdy. But I'd love to get my hands on some of those flower essence. Katie, she actually, my friend from Hawaii, who is my co-host on the Beauty and the Biohacker podcast, she sent me a flower essence. I think it's by my bed, but they are beautiful to take.
I'm obsessed, like, because she sent me some originally, and I have gone through them all, and I've reordered, and I'm like, oh, everybody needs flower essences. I read her book, and she's like, these are gonna like change your life, and I was like, I don't know, but they've been really, really amazing. So I'll introduce you for sure to her.
Gorgeous. Can't wait to connect. And I can't wait to try your new serapeptase supplement. And from one female entrepreneur to another, this is how the world works right now. We simply support one another. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Melanie. I don't even think I could like comprehend of what our third conversation in the future will be like. But this has been really fun getting to know you, and thank you for your willingness to be open, because I'm sure that individuals here on the show are going to gain some helpful insights for navigating life, biohacking, beauty, feeling and looking our best. And where can people find you, Melanie?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's so wonderful. We're such like-minded spirits, and it's just really an honor to be here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So people, I'm Melanie Avalon on all the social medias. You can go to melanieavalon.com that's my blog and links to my podcast, the Intermittent Fasting Podcast and Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast, and then the Serapeptase Supplement will be at avalonx.us. And if you're listening like right now, like I said, the pre-order is open tonight. We anticipate it'll probably sell out. We'll see. It'll be very telling. But ongoing, depending on when this airs, in general, the coupon code Melanie Avalon will get you a discount. So yes, not right now, not for the pre-orders, but probably when this airs on your show. So yeah, that's all the
Very,
things.
very exciting. And also, our last conversation on your show, the Melanie Avalon podcast, is linked up in the show notes here. So if you want to be introduced to her show, be sure you could start with ours, where we really dive into skin and all that stuff. That was a really fun conversation. So thank you everyone for joining us here today on the Rachel Varga podcast. Be sure to hit the bell notification on YouTube. Also hit that like button. Give this episode a like, please. Leave a review on the Rachel Varga podcast, available on Apple iTunes, Spotify, all over the place. Share this episode with a friend or family member that could maybe, be a recipient of a little bit of like a beautiful, joyful conversation with some real life talk here thrown in as well. So until next time, have a beautiful, radiant day, everybody. Keep your body, mind, spirit, energy strong. And I will see you next time right here on the Rachel Varga podcast. Thanks, Melanie, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I'll see you in the future.